Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the TriSummit. My name is Bob Babbitt, host of Breakfast with Bob. The TriSummit, inspiring, entertaining, educational sessions created for you so you can hit your personal bests in 2021 as hopefully we put this pandemic in the rearview mirror. This session of TriSummit is called Take Virtual With You. And the session is brought to you by Bolton Endurance Sports Training. Your best racing starts here. Before the pandemic, I don't think anybody even knew what virtual races were or solo challenges. During the pandemic, that's all we had. In this session, we'll talk about whether we should drop virtual racing and solo challenges altogether after the pandemic is behind us, or whether it makes sense to take them forward with us to some degree. Our guests, professional triathlete Heather Jackson, coach to the stars Ryan Bolton, and sports psychologist Colleen Sager. How you guys doing?
Awesome.
Wonderful. So, Brian, let's start with you. As a coach, how did you? So many of your athletes are going, okay, I'm getting ready for this race, and then that race, and all of a sudden, all of it's gone. How did you keep your athletes pumped up throughout this year, and how important was the virtual side of it?
Yeah, well, last year at this time,
Yes,
that
exactly
I was in
at this
denial. Yeah, exactly. And a lot of my athletes were in denial that it was going to be, that that virtual was actually going to become a reality. And, but as it progressed, and I think, some companies did a really good job with starting to incorporate it in relatively quickly. And
Yep.
so I would say it gave athletes an opportunity to, to race and get in race situations without actually, going to physical races and everything. It's still, though, even at this time right now, it's still evolving. I mean, the whole process of virtual racing is evolving, but I guess you already alluded to this a little bit. I do think that it's here to stay in some capacity for sure.
Yeah, I mean, think about it with the off seasons to be able to still have some races to focus on, especially if they're doing virtual events with some dollars in them. Why not?
Right. Yeah. Well, and I think another thing that they're turning out to be, which sometimes we use races for exactly the same thing. They're turning out to be incredible training tools. So you want to get some hard race efforts in. Now you don't have to fly across the country to do that or fly across the world to do that. You can just get out to your garage and get it set up.
Heather, were you doing a lot of indoor training and things like that before this all hit? And did you get into the whole virtual racing side?
I would do a fair amount inside. I probably not as much as maybe other athletes. Maybe if I had a key session, I would get on the trainer for those specific intervals. But I think since this last year, I think, definitely more. And like what Ryan was just saying, especially now, I would say coming into this new year, I've used it a little bit more just because, to get those race style efforts in as a really hard training day, it mixes it up for me a bit versus just going out on my own. So I've definitely started incorporating it a little bit more than I had in the past, for sure.
For you, Heather, how tough was this? It's like, as an athlete, your careers are not gigantic, right? So when you lose a year of your career at the peak of your career, how hard was this year for you?
Yeah, it's definitely, I don't think I saw it that way in the moment. Like last year, I wasn't thinking, oh my gosh, I'm losing a year. I think none of us really knew how long it would go on for. So I feel like I was pretty optimistic most of the year of like, oh, we're going to be back soon. We're going to be back soon. And so we kind of went into that base mode of just holding on and we'll be ready when it is time to race. And then obviously that strung out to be over a year. And I think, looking back now, it's definitely kind of sucks. It's like, oh, we missed a Kona at what I feel is kind of, I'm at my peak now of, okay, we did lose that year, but in the moment, I didn't see it that way. I was like, okay, this is great. I'm getting in all this training I've never done before. Higher volume, higher quality. I literally have over a year now of running under Ryan, and I ran for a year straight of like high mileage, long runs, just consistent for months on end, which when you're racing a lot, you have to take the breaks, you taper, you peak for different races. And I look back on last year and I know I've changed, as an athlete because of that in a good way. So,
and also as an opportunity, I would say for any athlete, but Heather for sure, was to stay healthy, being really healthy for an entire year, which in this sport, having that consistent health over time is huge.
Colleen, from your perspective as a sports psychologist, you've got athletes who, oh my God, what do I do? I'm getting ready for the Olympics, for Ironman, and now it's not there. I'm imagining you spent a lot of time talking people off the cliff because they thought their whole world was crumbling. Talk a little bit about what it's been like for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And not just talking them off the cliff, but also trying to, telling them to trust their coach and to trust the process. And so, like kind of alluding to what Heather was saying is, first year with Ryan, but this was a great opportunity for them to build up some base miles in running, or for, other athletes, maybe not so much swimming, but this is a great time for you to start to work on, like, what is your weakness? Let's work on that. Let's talk to your coach about what you need to improve on. And now this gave us the opportunity to do it. Another thing that we did talk about a little bit earlier was that, some other athletes took this opportunity to maybe alter their lifestyle a little bit. Maybe some athletes started, the women started having babies when they didn't think they would have a baby for another couple of years. And so really what it was let's adjust our goals and let's adjust, what your expectations are for this year and what can you accomplish in this healthy year in which you hopefully injuries are limited because you're running on a treadmill and you're cycling indoors. And so, your chances of bike accidents have gone down dramatically. So it was more of let's reassess our goals and let's find the positive and what you can take out of this. And let's focus on that rather than I'm not going to get to race this year and the Olympics are canceled. What am I going to do with my life now?
So you working with Ryan and working with the Bolton endurance athletes, you're dealing with runners, you're dealing with triathletes, Ironman folks, 70.3 folks. Is there a common thread with those athletes and how they've dealt with COVID and the issues that have come up?
What I did see initially, right off the bat, was that the people who dealt with COVID really well were endurance athletes and people who have suffered some sort of trauma in their lives. And what I mean by that is maybe like a family member who had been diagnosed with cancer or just, a life-threatening illness. It was kind of like, okay, this is a punch, I'm going to roll with it. And I feel like endurance athletes are really good at doing that. Doesn't matter what the sport is, because endurance athletes understand that you can't control everything. And even though it was a year that we didn't have that, oh God, I can't control everything that's happening at Kona. It was, I can't control everything that's happening to me today, much less in my race 3 months from now. And so I feel like endurance athletes actually didn't matter what sport was, dealt with it really well, because it was like, okay, this is, like I said, this is a punch. Let's just see, where it takes us and go from there.
So Heather, the fact that you did have all this time to train specifically with Ryan and not have to deal with racing, recovery, all that type of stuff, you think it created a better bond in terms of coached athlete?
Yeah, for sure. I think I feel bad because I started with Ryan literally January last year and he had never worked with me and all of a sudden we have COVID. So he probably didn't know, kind of how I am as an athlete or different, my routines. And also we never really, I would say even still, gone through a very intense build up to a race. We literally were super close to Oceanside last year and I felt better than I ever had going into Oceanside in years. I used to peak in March for Oceanside Wildflower, and then it's been probably 5-6 years where it's been this almost opening the season with it, but I'm not really fit yet. And then last year, Ryan and I had 2 good months under us and I felt good going in, and then it was canceled. 2 weeks out. So we still don't really have a race under us of me all in focused on a race. And he had to work with me under that last year of like, okay, what do you want to do? What's going to motivate you? What's going to keep you going right now? And also, yeah, like, are you someone more like a Ben Hoffman or more like a Sam Long who's out crushing it? Like, you as a coach have to work more on the mental side with an athlete through something like last year of what motivates them. Are you, yeah. So anyways, I think that probably did bring us closer because he got to know, okay, this is what she's like when we are presented with a situation like this. So
yeah, and I would say it was different. The growth was different because it was like, normally you bring on an athlete and like I said, you get in 3 months, 6 months, you start seeing race results and you know what's going on. So, and you're like, working with each other directly there and you're able to grow from that. Like we didn't have that opportunity last year, but I would say we had a totally different opportunity in that, like, what do you want out of life? You could ask like actually the bigger questions, you know what I mean? What really makes you tick? Like what's going to get you through, this situation and everything. So it's like almost like bigger questions were asked. And I think the other thing or a difference, and this came up with HJ maybe like 3/4 through the year, and if you remember this, is I think she was concerned, like she was like, I want to prove to you that I'm an ass kicker. And I was like, listen, I know you're an ass kicker. I know these things. You don't have to be on a course to do that, to prove that to me. I know that's what you're capable of. But it's funny because I obviously wanted to see, results out of her. And then but she also as an athlete wanted to, show me results. And I was like, we have time. We have time for that to happen.
Heather, when you look up ass kicker in the dictionary, your picture is there. Right?
It is. It's right. Yeah, it is. It's
you
right
don't
there.
really have to get anybody to find out if you're an ass kicker or not. We've all seen it. Speaking of ass kicking, most coaches specialize in just triathletes, right? Or just cyclists. And Ryan has a mix. So you get to train with, I'm guessing, someone like a Carolyn Rotich, 2012 Boston Marathon champion. And what's great about that is you don't have to have any expectations. You're not ever racing them. But what do you learn from those type of athletes who are at the top of their game, but in a sport you can obviously connect to, but it's different, right?
yeah, what do I learn?
Yeah, what do you learn from being with someone like that? Just how they approach their sport. They're at the very top of their sport, but they're not doing the cycling, they're not doing the swimming. Mm-hmm. She's running, but what do you learn from an athlete like that?
Yeah, I mean, for me, like I'm a triathlete, but I always look at like what are the best in the world in their sport doing. I mean, for me, it's you train a little bit differently because you have to manage 3 sports, obviously. But I mean, Ryan coaches Caroline and then other literally best runners in the world. And I want to know what they're doing because I want to be the best I possibly can. And so they're out there running the fastest marathons, literally.
Yep.
And so what do they do? I want to not obviously go their, I mean, ideally go their speed, but I mean, what are they doing? And for me, yeah, it was, it's been a huge learning curve on the run. And I always say that I feel bad because I wanted to work with Ryan as a triathlon coach, but I always bring up the run because I never have felt like I've gotten there on the run. And yeah, I wanted to work with Ryan for the whole sport, but also primarily the run and it's been literally like life-changing this last year of I've never trained the way I have under him. And he, for instance, has coached Caroline to win the Boston. And so, yeah, I've seen what the style of training has done. And I have yet, again, like we just mentioned, have yet to prove that it's working, but I see it in my running and my training. So yeah, I am looking forward to a race experience to try to prove that. But I already know personally what it's done over the last 12 months. So yeah, back to your question, just doing what the best in the world are doing and hoping that transfers to me.
And even like just the triathletes, like, I mean, I see Heather interacting with other pro triathletes that I work with and them all interacting with each other. And I think, I mean, they're all world-class athletes and they are in a similar sport or the same sport, but they're always learning something off of each other, and like you use Caro as an example. I know Caro learns a tremendous amount from Heather and from Ben and, the other group of people. So it's like, I mean, it's symbiotic. It's a symbiotic relationship between all of them.
Well, what's fascinating, Heather, is for a number of years, Ryan and I and Ben would talk about the training that they were doing, and it hadn't really, it hadn't come to fruition yet in terms of seeing the results. It took a while, but Ryan, you can chat about this. Just watching Ben's progression, you knew it was there in training, but it hadn't really come out until this last year, really, in 2019, before everything went south. What was there a point where you knew that he was ready for that great breakout run?
Yeah, but probably about 2 years before it happened. But I mean, he had some,
Yeah.
he'd had some really good results and really good success and everything. But I just knew, everything was aligned. He'd been healthy. He'd been consistent. The opportunity was there. But I think probably most importantly with him is like, I think physiologically he was always there, but like from a confidence standpoint, like he like woke up and he was like, I know that I can absolutely do this. And he had the confidence to do it. And he had the confidence to race in the right way for it to happen. Not over biking by really, like being smart in the way that he raced so that he could utilize and have confidence in his run to run that fast. And then when you can run that fast, then it gives you, tremendous amounts of confidence. So, which is same thing. I wish that he could have raced in 2020 because I know just rolling with that confidence, but I know he still has it.
So for Heather, you see that as well.
Me, I see that. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. She's a machine. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Heather's like, her potential is really insane. And like, yeah, for me, that's the great thing is hopefully we get to see real racing because I can't wait to see what she's capable of, and I know what she's done in the past and I know what she has the potential to do. So, that's super exciting.
So Colleen, you have this opportunity to work with this mix of athletes, everybody from Caroline to Heather to Sam Long and Ben Hoffman. Talk a little bit about how you, like new athletes coming into the program, into Ryan's program. How do you insert yourself into that relationship?
Well, it's a lot about their personality. Because each one of them is different and is going to approach their training differently. They're also going to interact with Ryan a little bit differently based on that personality. And for me, it's more getting to know them away from like their relationship with Ryan, because the coaching aspect of it, the physical coaching aspect of it is different for me than what Ryan is doing with them. And so I like to get to know them more on a personal level, like kind of like what they both alluded to earlier with the conversations with Heather, like what's motivating you to do this? And, like you see Sam and it's clearly Sam loves the crowd and the crowd loves Sam. And so knowing that that is something that motivates him and that he, then I build off of that. And so, because that also helps when things aren't going so great, if one of them gets injured, how do you stay positive? How do you keep moving from that? And so it doesn't really matter the sport or the level of athlete. I want to know more about their personality and then build my relationship with them off of that.
So Ryan, as a guy who was a 2000 Olympian, obviously an elite athlete, what did you take from your years as a athlete being coached to then becoming a coach?
That's a great question. I would say like at the most basic fundamental level is like just the physiology, the understanding of, the response of the body under duress and under this type of training, and I think actually a hard thing, and this is actually a detriment of being like a relatively high level athlete prior to coaching is like, I think a lot of high level athletes assume what worked for me is going to work for everyone. And that's not true. So it's actually almost like recognizing that, hey, what worked for me doesn't necessarily work for everyone, and kind of like creating this hybridized like program of figuring out what makes other athletes tick while also following, general philosophy, like a coaching philosophy that you go by. I think most importantly though, like coming from an elite background, and this is why I love working with pros, it's like my favorite thing is like, they get it. They understand. They know how to listen to their bodies. They understand their bodies really well. They're very athletic people, and they're incredibly driven people. So it's so much fun to work with people that are that way, because and I understand that. It's the same mentality that I have. And I mean, even as a coach now, it's kind of the luxury of being a coach, is I still get to live like I'm a professional athlete, and I still have as much passion, as much fire for, getting really great results. It's just not out of me anymore. It's out of other athletes.
So Heather, you coming off a challenge Daytona, right, which was really the only race of the year. And it's a mix of, it's almost like, let's just have a Super Bowl. We won't have any of that other, that baseball season or the football season. We're just going to have a Super Bowl. And you've got all these short course athletes, and you've got sort of a middle distance. It's not quite a 70.3. It's certainly way less than an Ironman. It's not quite an Olympic. Doing that race after really not racing all year. Talk a little bit about that experience. One, it's great to be back racing. It's great to have all the cameras and everything. At the same time, you're sort of doing something you hadn't done before in terms of the distance and the format.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. It was just, an opportunity to race, I guess. Just having not raced all year, I didn't actually necessarily, prep specifically for it. It was more just gratitude to be able to get out on a race course. I called Ryan probably 3 days before, was pulling the plug on it. I don't feel ready. We didn't prep for it. I mean, to be perfectly honest, it was I didn't think it would go off. I didn't think people would be able to travel given everything going on. But at the end of the day, it was an opportunity to get out, see friends, and get a race in a year when it didn't happen. So I used it as that, really.
How are you looking at the Miami race? Is it a little more focus on it? Or what I like about the Miami race is, with being on the road course on the bike, I think it'll be a lot more technical than, obviously Daytona was just put your head down. But being on the road course with all the turns and everything, it could be a different type of game.
Yeah, maybe. Looked at the course.
Yeah, well, I think the thing about Miami, and it's sort of like Daytona in that it is the distance is very abbreviated. It's like a 39-mile bike, it's an 11-mile run. So the run is actually kind of on the long end. But I would say Miami, and I think you would agree, when we talk about it, it's a training race too, because HJ's focus is on, really, we start at Kona, that's the race, and everything is built around that race. And I know that's where her focus is. That's where the training focus is. That's where, that's the race that she wants to win, and that's the race that we really gun for. And we move backward from there. It is an interesting year, Bob, because I would say in a normal year, Miami might not even be an option for her because of the distances and everything.
Right.
Opportunity to race. And it's hey, there's an opportunity to race. Let's get there. Just knowing what the expectations are, and knowing that she's going to be doing an Ironman a couple months later, hopefully. And, as long as races happen and everything, and that's where the true focus is. But getting to Miami will be good, and she's fit, and I think she'll do well there.
Is it hard, Heather, looking at these races because it's not like it used to be where you could race every weekend, multiple places. Is it hard to look at a race as, okay, I know I'm training through this. This is like a training day. So I'm not going to, whatever happens result-wise is not going to affect me. Is that possible?
Yeah, I think so. I think something like Miami for me, for sure. I would probably never go to it on a normal year, to be honest. It's a flat bike, and I like those hills. I like strength rolling courses. But like Ryan said, it's a chance to race. It's a chance for me to really practice that swim start, that standing there and not being scared shitless before the race, but standing there confidently. So I know what I'm going to that race to do and try to get done, and to use it as a training day and route. The goal right now is Ironman Tulsa. And so it's a really hard day in that lead up, and it's part of that prep. So it's certainly more high quality, high competitors we're facing versus maybe the start of a normal year where, okay, maybe there are 4 or 5 of us at, an Oceanside or a domestic race that everyone's kind of kicking their ear off. It's all of a sudden an Olympic distance Kona, but I mean, to be one of the best in the world, you have to race the best and see where you are, and it'll be a good check-in in
Right.
terms of that.
It gives us tremendous amounts of feedback no matter what, like for, how training's going, for sure.
Ryan, especially the last couple of years, there's so many more ways to measure what people are doing, and power running. And what do you use? What's important to you in terms of the athletes you're working with? What data matters?
Yeah, I would say the eyeballs are actually the biggest one. Like, honestly, looking an athlete into the eyes and like understanding, like, how is this to you? I mean, clearly we use like the parameters too, and pace numbers, heart rate numbers, power numbers. It depends on the sport of what we look at. So that stuff is like, very important, both from like measuring progress, but also prescriptively for, creating workouts and also even racing. So that stuff is, I mean, it's critical. But the great thing about pros is, and especially a person with HJ's like level of experience, is I know that like getting her to race day, we use numbers, but I know on race day, like we talk about numbers and everything, but that's her realm. Like, she gets to race day and she knows how to race. And I really trust her to know how to race. I mean, that's why she's one of the best in the world. So, I mean, do we use numbers? Yeah, but I also put a lot of trust in her, especially on a race day, to execute as planned and as we've, discussed.
Heather, how have you changed as an athlete since you started working with Ryan? What has he brought to the table for you?
Oh man.
Her biceps, they're a lot bigger now.
I think primarily it's like we had a lot of it the past few years has been just Waddy and I, and always preaching like, okay, no stone left unturned, and are we doing everything we can? And you always think you are, and then you bring, say, someone else onto your team, and now it's the three of us. And Ryan is almost like this overseer beyond just what happens in Waddy and I's household. It's like he just being held accountable of like he's checking in as well, versus just Waddy and I kind of figuring things out, has been great for me. And then just having him to check in with, to having that confidence I am doing the right stuff. Obviously, this is all beyond just giving me training that's totally different than what I had done before, and trying this new, I don't want to say high volume. For me, it's a lot more volume than I had ever done. And I had always not wanted to do that, but you always wonder like, oh, so-and-so trains like this or that. And for me, it was having something new, fresh, exciting, and also something that I was drawn to. So I think that all big combination came together, and it's been it's been an amazing year for me. Everyone talks about, oh, how did you get through this past year? And for me, it was like, I'm doing what I love to do. I'm seeing it pay off. I have this like third support, or second. I mean, I think of it as like me, Waddy, and Ryan. And like, it's taking the pressure off Waddy and I too, of like a married couple. So that's been great.
There's arguments in the Jackson Waddy household. When they start arguing, they just call me. So yeah. We'll let Ryan settle this.
Colleen, for you, with the whole pandemic and people, not knowing if they can't race, there's no paychecks, and just keeping people sane. How has that been for you?
It's like I can add this whole new section to my resume now, sane keeper. I mean, there's definitely been its ups and downs, especially with athletes who have kids at home. That one was interesting, dealing with school and how do I train? And, I'm in the middle of a session and one of them needs lunch and is screaming and, dad's in the other room or whatever it was. Keeping people sane was an interesting part of it, but also I, could kind of walk away and know that like, if you are sticking to your routine, if you are sticking to your plan of, even if there's not a race that you can go to in person, once virtual racing came up, it was a great excuse for a lot of people to go into their pain cave and, sort of get rid of a lot of their stress from the week. And find that like happiness of like to get mentally lost and focus on something else other than work or the kids or the pandemic. Just let me focus on, you know, what my wattage is supposed to be through this Zwift ride today, or, you know, just something else to focus on. And I think that that's what a lot of people, at least a lot of athletes that I work with, that was what got them through the day, was just finding a reason to focus on their training or their exercise. And yes.
Do you think the virtual racing training will continue on after pandemic ends?
Most of the athletes that I have are they're actually saying that they're excited for racing to start because mainly for the social aspect of it.
Yes.
They're ready to, you know, have the butterflies at the starting line and not like getting their watts up on Zwift so that they can take off as soon as the race starts. They're ready to actually be lined up in the water and have those butterflies in their stomach and ready to go and not have to worry about, did I turn the fan on? Do I have enough water next to me? You know, like, is the computer close enough? They're ready to focus on the actual race itself. And then the social aspect of, especially during the race, like if you're running or pick whichever part of the race you want, having somebody to motivate you who you can either hear coming up behind you, or can I catch that person in front of me, or rather than these emojis all over the place. And so a lot of athletes that I know are ready to get back into it for real with humans and have beer with them afterwards.
So Ryan, when I look at your mix of athletes between Caro and Heather and Sam and Ben, it's such an interesting mix. How do you, you're not one of those one size fits all type of coaches. How do you balance how each of those athletes, how you prepare their training?
Yeah, I mean, it's just based on what they need. Well, A, where they are in their cycle of training, but also what their specific needs are at the time. I mean, they all have different limiters. They all have different strengths. And they all kind of, like you said, they all kind of feed off of slightly different stimulus and everything. And I mean, that's the art of coaching ultimately, is understanding what a specific person needs at a specific time, you know, based on who they are. So like I said, I would say, I mean, I have a general training philosophy, but everyone's is like slightly modified. In fact, we're in Tucson now. I'm at Heather's house in Tucson, and the whole group is here as of like Wednesday of this week. Like we'll have a big group here, and some of their workouts are incorporated and some of them are separate. And you know, even though a lot of them are on like a very similar like trajectory because of the same race that they're doing and everything. So, you know, it's just kind of dependent, and which is hard too, because it's like you want them to feed off of each other in some workouts, but there's other days where it's like, no, you need to work on this and you need to work on that. And they kind of go their separate ways. But it's nice to have everyone in one location so that you can do that. I just sometimes like they'll have separate workouts, like an example this weekend. And I think I have people doing 3 different types of long runs. So like the first one starts at 6 a.m., ends at 8 a.m. The next one starts at 8 a.m. and ends at 10 a.m. And the next one starts at 10 a.m. and ends at noon. And so at noon, my butt will be really sore from being past 6 hours, and I'll have 60 miles under my belt or so. So you a good ride day.
You're basically setting this up so you can get your bike rides in.
Exactly. Yeah, no, totally. Yeah. My fitness levels start going up when I have camps like this. Exactly.
How many athletes will you have in town?
We'll have, cause we rent a house here. And so on and off at that house, we'll have anywhere between 3 and 4 or 5 athletes kind of popping in and out. And then HJ, you know, and Wadi have a house here, and then Ben Hoffman has a house here as well. So it's kind of like, you know, I mean, and yeah, and so anywhere, training sessions, anywhere from 2 to 6 people, but yeah, in general. I mean, there might even get to be a few more than that. So yeah.
Very cool. Hey, thanks you guys for taking time. It's always fun to catch up. Heather, we'll see you in Miami next week, right?
Yeah.
For your training day.
Yeah.
I just realized it was next week.
Next week.
We were having dinner last night, and I was like, so in a couple of weeks, like I'm going to be here and you're going to be in Miami. And she's like, I'm going to be where? And I was like, Miami's 2 weeks from now.
I don't think she'd be saying that if it was like a couple weeks before Kona. So in a couple weeks, you'll be in Kona. She'll be like, wait, what? What's Kona? What?
Exactly.
I know we're 12 weeks from Tulsa, but
yeah,
12 weeks from Tulsa.
Yeah, that's the focus right now. Exactly.
I love it. When that's a first time event, those are always cool.
Yeah, it's a US Champs. It looks like a great bike course, like rolling hills. So just what I like, that kind of punchy rolling. And then pretty flat marathon. And for me, yeah, I mean, I'm going there to try to win the race, but I really want to see what I can do on that marathon. So,
And it could be tough conditions, which is great too, to learn what happens in those conditions.
So at this point, you need that race to go qualify for Kona, or you're in.
no, I'm already qualified.
You're already qualified. Boom, done. I like that. Hey, thanks you guys. Always appreciate your time. Enjoy your time in Tucson. I love the fact that you're balanced. You got Bend, you got Tucson, you go cross country skiing, you go ride. You can do whatever the hell you want, Heather.
That's right. Yeah, it's living the life.
You guys are living the life, man. Thank everybody for tuning in to the session of Taking Virtual with You. Thank you to Best Coaching and you, Ryan, our presenting sponsor for the session, and Heather, Ryan, and sports psychologist Colleen Sager. You guys are the best. This actually was the final session of TriSummit 2021. Hope that you took a lot out of this. Eager to get you back racing this year when we hopefully have this pandemic behind us. My name is Bob Babbitt. Thanks everybody for joining us, and get out there and race. Our race directors definitely need our support. Thanks everybody.